Welcome to All Grown Up Now, a tale of retail, relocation, revenge, reinvention, reckless behavior, really good clothes, indiscretion, infidelity, domestic violence, and one kidnapping. I'm Kenneth D. King, podcasting from my studio near Union Square in New York City. This podcast is another of a series of installments from a novel I wrote called All Grown Up Now, A Friendship in 3 Acts, which is available on Amazon.com. You can actually purchase it as a regular book or an ebook. It's the story of a small-town boy who dreams of being a grown-up and his journey to get there. Each week, you'll hear another installment of this story. In the last episode, we heard about Ken's small-time high school lawbreaking and his grown-up experience of surviving a class reunion. In this episode, we learn the new vocabulary word, Lesbiterianism. Episode 3, Window Displays Calling Me. Place, Oklahoma City. Time is late 1979 and early 1980. Right after high school, and while I was going to college, I held down 2 jobs. One, selling clothes at a chain store called C.R. Anthony's, and the other job was designing windows at another Anthony's store. Fancy or stylish C.R. Anthony's wasn't, but it was a job, and I jumped at it when I got fired from Wendy's old-fashioned Hamburgers, a firing I richly deserved. This is why I'll sometimes say that retail is a career for those who can't cut it in fast food. But to back up a little, at Wendy's old-fashioned Hamburgers, I went out in a blaze of glory. I had locked horns with the amoeba-shaped manager, whose name was James, but he wanted to be called Jamie, and he wore a pencil-thin mustache. He started as the assistant manager, and I took an immediate dislike to him and proceeded to ride roughshod over him. Obviously, I wasn't thinking ahead. He became the manager when the guy I liked moved on, and I knew my days were numbered. It happened during a lunch rush. Jamie put me on the grill after completely covering it with cold hamburger patties. We proceeded to get slammed, and all the time he harassed me to get that meat cooked. Since it took some time for the grill to get heated back up with all the cold burger meat, I was doing what I could. In frustration, I threw the spatula down on the grill and shouted, "If you think you can get this meat cooked any faster, then you get your fat ass over here and do it." And I was history. So I took the job at Anthony's because it was the first offer I got. Anthony's was a place where the Red State shopped. It carried a good stock of Levi jeans, Hager double-knit slacks, Munsingwear shirts when they were still uncool, and Hush Puppy shoes when they were still seen as geek shoes. Anthony's was a small chain of blue-collar type stores in the Oklahoma-Kansas area, and the first one I worked at was on Meridian and Northwest 50th. My new boss was a man named Jack. Looking back, I'm sure Jack was a closet case. There were clues, which I'll get to in a moment. Jack's wife worked as the bookkeeper, his son worked as a salesman, and his sister Alpha May was also a salesperson. She definitely was not a sales lady. There were several other family members sprinkled around the place, and 2 or 3 non-family employees, of which I was one. If you weren't related, you were screwed work-wise. Let me introduce you to Alpha May. Alpha May was a sawed-off, roly-poly barracuda with wavy marcelled gray hair, cat-eye glasses, and lipstick right in the center of her lips. She was so bold in stealing sales that she'd snatch them right out of my hands and ring them up on her number. When I complained to Jack about this regular occurrence, he just said, "Such a sweet thing as Alpha May would never do anything like that. She's a good Christian woman." Well, speaking of good Christians, Jack claimed to be Episcopalian, but I really believe Jack was a Lesbiterian. He also wanted something for everyone in the store, as he would say. This was a very small store that carried women's, men's, and children's clothes, shoes, and some domestics such as linens and fabric, so there wasn't a lot of room for anything. But in regards to something for everyone, and Jack's Lesbiterianism, One day, Alpha May was in the back room checking in an order that Jack had made for the lingerie department. We all heard a shriek from the back room, and I just assumed that she saw a mouse. But we all ran back to see what was up because it was a slow sales day. Alpha May was standing there, pale and shaking, gingerly holding a tiny clothes hanger between her index finger and thumb like it was some sort of venomous snake. She was staring at it, eyes wide, horror-stricken. Hanging from the tiny hanger was a pair of shiny, leopard print, split-crotch panties. The opening at the crotch was trimmed with black marabou and tied together with little black satin ribbon bows. In the box were several different styles and colors of the same thing. Never had I seen anything like it. I'm sure Alpha May hadn't either, but I got the drift of what type of customer this garment was for, and she didn't shop at Anthony's. "Why, I'm sure there's been a horrible mistake," gasped Alpha May. "My brother would never consider ordering something like this." In the meantime, the rest of us non-family members were amusing ourselves by unpacking and examining these very unusual goods while speculating under our breaths as to which ones Jack was going to take home for himself to wear. Now, his wife was such a fat ass and no fun at all that she would never fit, let alone wear anything like these. Holding up the packing slip, which had the style numbers and little line drawings of each item ordered, I said, "No, Alpha May. There's no mistake. Here's Jack's signature." And indeed, there it was. They were sent back. Poor Jack. He never even got to see him. Pity. It was Jack who introduced me to the world of window display. It happened one evening when it was slow. He told me to make a new display in the windows. Now, I'd never done that sort of thing, but I figured that, hell, I had good taste. I could figure it out. At the time, I was in my minimalist period and did this very graphic, striking arrangement. It was fun, and I got some compliments on it. The next day, I came in to work and found that Jack had tarted up the display with a profusion of plastic flowers. He had a real fondness for them. Closet case, see? And they were strewn liberally throughout the store. There were plastic flowers and foliage for all seasons, all of them faded and dusty from years of overuse. I stormed into the window and tossed out all the offending shrubbery, and whenever I displayed windows from then on, it was a back and forth, flowers in, flowers out situation. But I was hooked on display. Eventually, I prevailed on the manager of the Anthony's at 23rd and Meridian to let me do their displays on my days off. This was my second job. This proved to be a better situation creatively, as the manager had no interest in plastic flowers. He was hopelessly straight, and he just wanted me to take care of the damn window so we didn't have to. Thus began my career in window display. It was in that store at 23rd and Meridian that I made most of my design mistakes and embarrassments, so I don't have to repeat them now. When I look back at some of the things I did in those windows, I blush at the amateur excess. There was the time I suspended everything upside down from the ceiling with fishing line. The entire display just turned upside down. Other times I get creative with spray paint, lacquering the old mannequins with gloss black or silver, trying to make them look up to date. Anything I could that was inexpensive and eye-catching, I tried. I had varying degrees of success. When I look at the other things I did on that job, like arranging with different stores in the shopping center to borrow furniture, props, and such, I see the inklings of my eventual self-employment. But now I'm getting ahead of myself. Meanwhile, back at home, my choice of college degree, which was fashion merchandising, was an embarrassment to Mom. This was what was referred to in the rectangular states as an MRS degree. In other words, a girl studied fashion merchandising while she was looking around the college for a husband. She would study until she got married. I was the first male graduate from the fashion merchandising program at my college. Between my junior and senior years, I made the jump from Anthony's to Dillard's, the one in Shepherd Mall, which had just undergone a thoroughly glamorous makeover. Dillard's new look was so glamorous, and this store had really fabulous mannequins. They were Grenacher mannequins, and they looked so lifelike and fabulous. I desperately wanted to work in department store display and heard that there was an opening. Also, I liked the idea of having only one job instead of two. So, in my off time that summer, I stationed myself in front of the store manager's office every day for 2 weeks, even though he had told me the first day I showed up that there were no openings in display. At the end of those 2 weeks, he called me into his office and shouted in frustration, "The only opening I have in the entire store is department manager for the lamps and pictures department." "I'll take it. I can start in 2 weeks," I replied. Thus started my career in big department store retail, if not display. It was my foot in the door. The day I started, I discovered that the store had fired the man who hired me, and there was a new manager, Mr. Probst. I introduced myself to him, explained to him that his predecessor had just hired me, and told him of my interest in moving over to the display department. He was very encouraging and non-committal. 2 months later, the display guy, David, who I thought was cute, had emergency knee surgery just in time for Christmas trim to go up. Since he had pissed off everyone in the store with his Queenie tantrums and hissy fits, this was in the days before the phrase high maintenance came into use, David was in trouble. Nobody wanted to help him out. So Mr. Probst remembered my interest in display, and as they say, he went out a youngster and came back a star. This was my first experience in Christmas trim. Now, Christmas is the season in retail that starts in August and goes until December. In my day, preparation backstage began then and continued until the evening of Thanksgiving, when a full night of working made everything magically appear. To make this happen, there were days of monotony taken up with wrapping fake gift boxes, trimming and lighting the trees and wreaths, painting props that required red and green, pulling the Santa out of the box, and repairing his moth-eaten beard. The list was endless. As I may have said, during college I lived at home and commuted to school and to work. This usually involved me getting up early, usually 5 o'clock, to get to school. I got out of school about 1 in the afternoon and drove like a bat out of hell to get to work. My dinner break was around 6, and it was either used to study or take a nap deep in the back of the furniture department. I'd get out of work about 10 p.m., then it was home to do homework and off to bed about 2 in the morning, and then, to repeat the process, I did it all again every day. All I remember from college is sleep deprivation. I looked at my transcript recently, and my reaction was, "Really? I took those classes?" I did well in them, summa cum laude with a 3.94 average, but hell if I can remember what I learned. A few weeks before graduation, I announced that on May 6th, I would start looking for an apartment. My aim all through college had been to get out from under Mom's prying eyes and absolute dictates and live life my own way. Living at home was really getting in the way of being gay and stylish and 22. I had come out earlier that year. I lost my virginity on Valentine's Day, to be exact. I didn't plan it that way, it just happened that way, and he gave me a 2-pound box of Godiva chocolates. Now, to the younger crowd, this was a big damn deal in 1980 in Oklahoma City. Godiva chocolates were $35 a pound, and there was only one very fancy store that sold them. So to this day, when I see those gold boxes, I get all nostalgic. I could go into the whole coming out story, but it wasn't remarkable, really. Others have told it better. It really was just me deciding once and for all that this was not just a phase. As a friend observed many years later, I couldn't pass, not then, not now, so I had to come out, a practical decision. Admittedly, it wasn't as easy to be gay in Oklahoma City as it might be in, say, New York. However, I was always thought of and called a big fag, so the only change was that I was actually doing something to earn the title. "How much do you expect to pay for an apartment?" Mom demanded sarcastically when I broke the news about moving out. She had the fantasy that I'd stay put and pay her rent, and she would still tell me what to do. $100 a month, I replied. "You'll never find anything for that," she screeched. "You stupid kid, you think you know everything. You can't make it on what you've got coming in. You should have gotten a degree in something you could use, like accounting, but no, you got that degree in, whatever you got it in." "Fashion merchandising," I shouted. "I'm going to write it down for you so I don't have to answer this question again. The only time you actually could remember it was when you tried to talk me into getting a doctorate in it so I could still stay home and pay rent. You're so bullheaded, you just want to do what you damn well please." "Well, Mom, I had to pay for my own college," I said back evenly. "You yourself have always preached that the one who pays has the say. So since I was paying for it myself, I felt that it was my decision." This ambivalence about my college education showed itself graduation night. I was the first of Miss Ann's children to graduate, and summa cum laude at that. So where was I taken afterwards as a celebration? Taco Bell. Yes, Taco Bell. I was bitterly disappointed, but knew not to complain about it, because it never occurred to her that this wasn't quite the venue for this kind of celebration. The sticking point in my choice of degree was that I didn't make all that much money yet. Mom was keeping track of what came into my bank account, what a surprise. It was at the bank where she worked, something she continued to do until I moved to San Francisco. She grew up in a day when a college degree automatically got someone a big salary and a company car. But Reagan was running, this was 1980, and she didn't see that the times are changing. "I'll find something, just you watch," I insisted after listening to this diatribe. "Well, let me warn you, young man, once you're out, you're out. You're never coming back, do you hear? Never," she shouted. It was supposed to be a threat that would scare the bejesus out of me and make me think again about moving out. It didn't. That's exactly what I had in mind, never coming back. I should introduce you to my mother because she is one of the towering presences and influences in my life. Ann King, or Miss Ann as I refer to her and her voice in my head, was born during the Great Depression in Salina, Kansas, and never let us forget it. She was one of 6 kids of a cold mother and a diffident father. Grandpa had a good job as a fireman, but with 6 children, finances were tight. They took in boarders for most of Mom's childhood. To hear her tell it, life was harsh. "Your grandmother would punish all of us if one of us did something wrong," I remember her saying. "That tree stump in her backyard? She killed that tree, stripping branches off to beat the kids with. We'd all have to line up by age, and she'd start with the oldest. Since I was next to the youngest, she'd have gotten good and worked up, and we got it worse. I was always walking around with welts across the back of my legs." Mom prided herself for not doing that with her 3 kids. Early in her life, Miss Ann was expected to get a job and contribute to the family finances, as well as paying for her school books and clothes. She worked at the dime store in downtown Salina. Like others of her generation, the Depression marked her for life. After she graduated from high school, Miss Ann went to work for the Bank of America as a teller. Her job carried quite a lot of responsibility. She was to walk to the businesses of the bank's customers and bring back their deposits. Knowing that she would be carrying a lot of money and therefore be a target, a family friend in the police department trained her in how to use a hat pin. It seems that carrying a concealed gun was illegal then, but packing a hat pin wasn't. Miss Ann learned how to rip a guy's arm veins open with one stab of the hat pin. Thankfully, she never used it, but I remember when I was growing up, there was always a hat pin in any of Mom's handbags. In Salina, Kansas in the late 40s, no respectable young woman had her own apartment, so she lived at home. She was expected to leave home only when she married. Even though Miss Ann was over 18 and earning a living, the folks still told her what she could and couldn't do, but she now got to pay rent for the privilege. That's what she had in mind for me. What Mom had really wanted to do was to go to college and be a teacher. I joke even now that there is a God because she inflicted Miss Ann on only 3 children, not 3 generations of them. Regarding Miss Ann in college, she used to say, "Your Aunt Helen got to go to college, and she just screwed around for a semester so the folks wouldn't let anyone else go. She just screwed it up for everybody else," she used to complain. "The same with piano lessons. Elvira got them and didn't practice, so the folks sold the piano and nobody else got to try." So even though Mom was happy that I was graduated from college, the mixed message persisted, which I can hear her say in my head to this day. You think you're so goddamn smart just because you have a college education. Mom always had an inferiority complex about not having gone to college, so I would hear that particular outburst whenever she felt like she'd lost the upper hand. That's what would prompt outbursts like the one when I announced my intention to get my own apartment. I was used to it. It irked me, but I was used to it. As I said, life began for me on May 5th, 1980. So, bright and early on May 6th, I went to the apartment locators on May Avenue to find my dream place. I sat across the desk from one of the automaton agents there. After taking all my information, she droned, "Well now, just what kind of place are you looking for?" "I want something very small on the northwest side of town and close to my work. I work at Shepherd Mall." "And how much do you want to pay?" $100 a month. Much to my surprise, this elicited a spell of mirth and chuckles from the automaton agent that made her look positively lifelike. She thought it quite funny that I was wanting this combination of circumstances and proceeded to tell all the other agents in the office so they too could enjoy the joke. One of them called out, "Hey, honey, I have just the place." Silence. "Could I see it?" I asked. "Sure, hun. When do you want to go look?" my new friend asked as she walked over and offered her hand. She looked like Central Casting had sent her to the wrong audition. They wrote automaton on the call sheet, and she read animation. She had red-dyed hair, pinned up in a French twist, powder blue double-knit bulletproof polyester pantsuit, white patent leather sandals, and mercurochrome orange fingernails and matching lipstick, from which dangled a terratin, the ash dangerously long. "The name's Patty. You want to see the place soon, hun?" "Right now, if I could." We shook hands, and I could hear the ka-ching of a sound of a commission earned. Patty made a phone call and came back with a pink piece of paper, which was scented with Taboo by Cody. On it was written, 6100 North Villa, manager named Q. "You'll ask for the manager. Her name is Q, pronounced like the pool cue," Patty said. "It's real small, I'm told, but in a good neighborhood. The old lady who owns the place is a real caution, I hear, but I think you'll get on fine." Off I went to find my new home, which was close by. As I parked on the street, I looked around. This was a nice neighborhood. The place was a collection of small duplexes, not an apartment house as I was expecting. After finding the office and introducing myself to Q, an odd name for an odd woman who looked like Frances Farmer after the electroshock, we went to see the apartment. The apartment itself was actually in my landlady's backyard. Q told me that Mrs. Freeman had inherited the property, which was a farm, many years ago. She was very shrewd with her assets and built this series of duplexes as income property long before the area had been built up, and over time she sold off the rest of the land. After the golf course went in, Mrs. Freeman had decided that with the fence they put up blocking the view, it was a shame to waste such a large parcel of backyard, and she had a mini duplex built, the operative word being mini. There were 2 units here, a 1-bedroom and a studio. I would be looking at the studio. Q unlocked the door and showed me in. This was indeed the smallest living space I had ever seen. The width of the living room, which was paneled in fake walnut wood grain, was the length of a twin bed, which fit in the far end of the room, and the length of this room was about 9 feet long. That was the big room. The closet was in the kitchen along with the air conditioner. The only way to tell the difference between the closet and the kitchen was that the kitchen had the window and the stove. Heat was provided by one small space heater they would bring when the season changed. Now, I could put my hand flat on the ceiling, and I'm only 5'6". However, what sold me about the place, aside from price, was the bathroom window. First off, the bathroom itself was the size of an airplane bathroom. But the window was one of those aluminum sample windows you see at the hardware store. You know, the samples you order to measure from? It measured about 10 inches wide by 18 inches high, with an itty-bitty window screen, a sash that pulled up and down, complete with a tiny lock, just like the grown-up windows had. After I moved in, I made a blind for it using just a placemat I bought at Pier 1 Imports. Also, after moving in, I put in a transparent shower curtain. Mom was scandalized. "You can see right through it," she exclaimed. "People could see you in the shower." I said that if I had someone in there when I was showering, it would be because I wanted him to see me. That gave her something to contemplate and stopped the conversation dead. The place came furnished, a term that almost always means we had these shitty things we just didn't feel energetic enough to send to Goodwill. I immediately asked Q if she could have them removed, as I had my own things or soon would have. "It's $100 a month with a $50 security deposit," Q said. "If you get the deposit to me today, you can take possession tomorrow." "Done," I said. I had taken my first step on the path to being a grown-up, my first apartment. In the next episode, titled I Get Into Big Boy Retail, Ken gets to have a little fun in his new apartment. Then he gets the promotion that will introduce him to the other main character in this story, a man named Mark. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Subscribe to my podcast, and if you have questions or comments, you can reach me through my website, which is allgrownupnow.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Kenneth D. King, on Facebook at Kenneth D. King Design, or on my main website, KennethDKing.com. Coming soon to iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, and SoundCloud.